Well, I am so excited to have a chance to spend some time with you and talk about your career journey and a little bit about what you've done, which, by the way, I have this very long list of all of the amazing things you've done, which are everything from your current endeavor, which is an impact investor and founder of Crest Ventures. I want to hear about that, but also all the way back to being a finance major and actually spending time on a regional and national sports talk show with Fox and ESPN, on up to being invited to the White House for discussions, which I don't think I knew before reading this bio of yours. So you have met incredible people, lots of sports figures, I would imagine. We are talking the day after the Super Bowl. So I'm very curious, did you ever have a chance to interview any football players on any of the winning Super Bowl teams? Or is there a particularly special sports figure that you interviewed that really made an impression on you?
Well, first of all, taking it back, Pam, I was a terrible student growing up. All right, so I I applied to 10 colleges and got rejected by 9 of them, and the only reason I got into the one was because I happened to be a very good baseball player, and I was an Olympic alternate the first year that they had it. So
Very cool.
I was what you would call a wandering generality versus a meaningful specific, and I tried many
I'll
different
write
things,
that
which is
down.
yeah, good wandering
Wandering
specific.
generality.
A
Okay.
wandering generality versus a meaningful specific. And I just tried a lot of things because I had no idea what I wanted to do, but I wanted to be happy and I wanted to do something that had passion in my life. So I was really interested in sports. Later on, after trying a corporate career and going to law school,
Mhm.
I really wanted to kind of test my own fears. And I walked into ESPN, which was in Connecticut, where I grew up, and just basically begged, borrowed my way in there, and they gave me a shot at it. My brother Eric and I got a chance to be on, in 400 markets around the country, which was really exciting and very scary. But to your point, we interviewed so many interesting people. This was back in the early 2000s. And my favorite person that I interviewed probably was Wayne Gretzky, even though I'm not a big hockey fan,
Ah,
because he came into the studio and he's shorter than I am, and he's not as big as I am. And I'm looking at this records. I'm thinking, how is this guy just dominating the world stage in his sport? Like, what is so fascinating that he's just crushing everybody else? And there's the old story about him, which is other people skate to where the puck is. I skate to where the puck is going to be, which is now something that a lot of people use. But from him, I learned the power of anticipation. And I think, to the point about, why I consider myself to be successful, some people do, a lot of it has to do with always thinking and trying to be 2 steps ahead, either of where a company's going or where the market's going or where a relationship is going or how I'm going to change or what the needs of the public are. So to your point, I've never interviewed any of the current Super Bowl people, only because this was 20 years ago, but I had a really great chance to interview Joe Montana and a lot of other really fascinating people. So
wow. That is very cool. I'm a little jelly about Joe Montana. I saw him last night on TV, still looking really good. But that is really cool. So you wound your way into some of my questions because you talked a little bit about how you ended up in sports broadcasting by way of finance. And I don't think I knew that you went to law school. Where
yeah,
did,
well,
did you
it
do
was
that?
one of those things where I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was coming out of a baseball career, I'll say, which happened to also get a degree while I was playing baseball. And I didn't know what I wanted to do. And so it seemed like people said, "Hey, you're a really good schmoozer, Chris. You should go to law school." So I took the LSAT. I don't know how I passed, but I did. And I got into law school when I was in law school. And I just didn't, I'm not a good academic person. I just wanted to get in the courtroom without having a degree. But unfortunately, that's not the way it works. It
Suits. I
works.
saw a show about that. Suits.
Yeah, no, I love that show. I love that. But anyway, I started to realize that I saw around me that most people, I think, were caught up in making a living,
Mhm.
versus designing a life. And so I learned early that if you want to do something different or impactful, you kind of have to design and chart your course versus just waiting for the ebbs and flows of life to take you here, or getting a job, buying a car and a condo and getting locked into all kinds of payments and things. And then all of a sudden you can't get out of a routine. So I also learned early that I wanted to measure my impact, not just by my wallet, by um, how I could help others. And I had a couple of really good mentors and coaches and people at that stage that really taught me the idea of tenacious giving, like an attitude of giving, and not just getting and what can you take from things, but what can you actually have. And I felt like God did well by me, gave me some really good communication skills and powers, and I wanted to put those to good use. I had really great parents. And so I was praying on it, Pam, to try to find something that would push me towards something that I like to do and have a meaningful impact. And the short story is my school asked me to come in and talk to the baseball team because I seemed to have this idea of thinking forward. And the athletic director heard the speech and then hired me to speak to all the athletic teams. And I suddenly became the sports guru to teach kids that you're not going to be a professional. You have to really be thinking about the next step in life, and started a small company out of that. I got called in by a school who said, we want you to come in and help us. And in walked the admissions director. And you've met my wife, Sue. And it was like one of those cartoon character movies where she walked in with her blonde hair. And back then it was big, like, what was it? Maybe early 90s hair. And It was like a cartoon character. Woo, woo. I was like, wow. And I asked her out 5 or 6 different times. She rejected me every single time. And finally, when I stopped, she called me and asked me out to lunch. And I was like, I don't understand. I asked you out 5 or 6 times. She's like, yeah, I don't like pushy guys. So I got into the whole, business of helping and coaching. And then I met Sue, and she had a real strong working knowledge of the government contracts and welfare reform. And we formed an alliance personally and professionally and started Career Team. And, the rest took off from there.
That's amazing. So you actually veered into workforce, but you also found your life and soulmate as a part of that, who also has that same passion. And, that's where actually you and I met each other. It was up in Connecticut. I worked for the Workforce Development Board there in Hartford, and you were one of the contractors. Career Team was one of the contractors, your former company. And, I would absolutely agree with you. You are just an exceptional communicator and an exceptional schmoozer too. But so we have spent a few decades in the workforce development arena. What do you think as you embarked on that career, and what do you think has changed a lot? I mean, I have a lot of opinions about this. We worked together really through good times and bad, right? I mean, we went through the 2000s, coming out of 9/11 and the impact really that had on all of Connecticut, as well as then the Great Recession into 2008 and 9. And the workforce development system was so central to helping people get back to work and get back on track. And your gift, of helping people set that plan and, giving them really motivation and direction was so incredibly needed. How do you see things have changed in that world? Or, what do you think that world really needs to pay attention to now as we look at, the 21st century and where the country is now?
It's a great question. I just want to say, Pam, and I don't mean to sound like I'm pandering to you. I've met a lot of people in my 25 years. I think you honestly are one of the most foremost thinkers. You study culture, you study the private sector. You are, I think, a real gift to the industry. And I think that one of the lacking areas is that there seems to be a lot of bureaucracy and a detachment from what's really going out in the marketplace. So to your question, one of the things that people don't realize is that over 60% of all the jobs in the country are going to come from entrepreneurship. And entrepreneurship is, I think, an underutilized topic in the space. There are 31 million emerging entrepreneurs in the country, which represents about 16% of the workforce. But what's not known is about 55% of all adults have started or tried to make a business in their career. And what's also not considered is if you think about the Fortune 500, whether it's Facebook or NVIDIA or any of those companies, they all started as startups. And so I think the idea of investing and getting behind the innovation of what we can do with the advent of technology and the ability to research faster is really, really, really important. The other thing, Pam, is that if you look at the majors and what college kids are choosing to study, entrepreneurship is way down the list. In fact, it's only the 120th most popular major. So here we have entrepreneurship creating 60% of the new jobs. But in our education system, the teaching of how to go out and be an entrepreneur is way down the list out of 120th. And so there's a disconnect there. And so I think to answer your question, I think the ideas of getting a job and staying in a big company with benefits for the rest of your life, those days are over. You have to be very entrepreneurial and think 2 steps ahead and protect your own interests and think like a CEO, because companies are not like when my dad maybe worked. He stayed with the same company for 40 years. He got the gold pen, the gold watch. He never wrote a resume. Today, you talk to young people, they're bouncing around and changing. So I think the idea of being very mobile as a job seeker and the idea of maybe thinking of yourself as a company you and teaching yourself to be more in line with, I'm not waiting to be told what to do. I have to think of how I'm going to navigate my way through this labor force and maybe change industries, careers, and learn new skills and be a good public speaker, be tech. Like there's a lot that goes into being successful today. So to answer your question, I think those are the biggest changes that I've seen, where when we started 25 years ago, it was go to work at the Marriott, get a job at Walmart, get a job at a big company, IBM, and you're set and you're golden. Now, not so much anymore.
Right, right. I think what you said about entrepreneurship is very interesting too. You talked about how it's not really a major that students seek after, but the skills embedded inside of it, the decision making, the critical thinking, the salesmanship, right? The business acumen, all of those things are elements that make you successful in a career and a job, as well as successful, as an entrepreneur. And perhaps those skills, rather than having a degree called entrepreneurship, that those should somehow be embedded in the various disciplines that are out there. There's a whole huge debate about whether you need a college degree to be successful, or do you actually need critical transferable skills that are going to be able to be adapted into this technology workplace. AI is on everyone's mind, and research these days. What's it going to do to jobs? I live and work in an economy that is very service based. It's interesting because I know you're a visitor once in a while to Orlando. And the fun things that we have to do down here. There is an enormous need for workers in hospitality and tourism. But what we see are those workers have to have all of those skills, plus exceptional customer or guest experience acumen, as well as begin to understand technology, because in every aspect of what people experience here in Orlando, from lodging to rental cars to theme parks, technology is a component of it. And so, back to your point about sort of creating entrepreneur you, I love that idea, because I think skills need to be developed in a lifelong capacity and not just as part of a particular discipline that you might study in a formal, setting like college or technical school or something like that.
And
so you
certainly about college, I have 3 kids. The youngest one wants to be a holistic nutritionist, which requires a 4-year degree and a 2-year. So she has to get those credentials. Right. My oldest, Alana, got her MBA in 3 years. She had an accelerated MBA, and she's in marketing. My son went to Babson, which has been the #1 entrepreneurial school. He was there for a semester and a half, and he called me up and he said, "Dad, I just want to start. This is not for me." He left school and never got his college degree. And so I think there is a big argument today about the value of the diploma, and there is a lot of lessons and value to it, and that's for a different time. But I do think if you listen to some of the people like Elon Musk and others that are just talking about the value of, to your point, work on your technology skills, work on your public speaking, work on your communication, YouTube, go online. You can basically self-educate, but employers are going to be looking for that today. And I do think it's an interesting time where people, are going to be tasked with bringing to the table a value proposition that may have been different in the past, even entry level.
Yeah. And sort of flip that too, Chris, because one of the things we talk about continuing in workforce development world is also educating the business community about what the workforce itself is looking for. Post-pandemic, there is a lot of emphasis on work-life balance and wanting to develop the skills that we've talked about, wanting to find meaning in work and having things, as you say, that make you passionate about work, and the money will flow. What kind of advice would you give businesses out there as they navigate kind of this workforce space?
Yeah, that's a good question, Pam. I think my old company that I'm still on the board and minority investor career team, they do and continue to do an awesome job of it. They've created what's called a culture club, and they
Mhm.
bring to the table, the CEO to middle managers to entry levels, a wide mix of everybody, and they get together on a call, and they really navigate and talk through what are the issues that are facing people today, maybe in a post-COVID world, about remote access, or self-directed training, or the benefits, et cetera, or caring for an elderly parent. Like, people today really are looking for their employer to not just be punch a clock, leave, and then it's impersonal. They want them to be part of the fabric of who they are as an individual. You can't just turn off your job the minute
Right.
that you leave. And I think the employers that understand and try to build a concentric community around their people and show empathy about the struggles of being a parent, or the struggles of bills, or whatever's going on in the economy, et cetera, or we came out of COVID. I think employers need to be more than saying, well, I pay you a salary, what else do I have to do? I
Mhm.
think the smart ones that want to have good retention numbers and not just have a high turnover rate are really starting to figure out and how to embrace people are going to have challenges today. They're going to have anxiety as an all-time epidemic. I mean, you have EAP programs. When I was the CEO, a lot of people are facing it. I think an employer has a responsibility. I know that I felt that way. And
Mhm.
I know you do as well, is that
Yeah.
beyond just saying, I give you a salary and a job, I want to help you feel part of this community and almost be, I don't want to call it too bold, but almost an extension of your family. Like, you know, because we're asking them to do so many things and maybe work atypical hours, sometimes from home, and et cetera. So I think, to your point, if we can educate employers who maybe grew up in old school ways that say, I give you money, therefore you do what I say, and that's it. I think those folks are not going to be a place where a lot of today young people want to go to work.
Yeah, and ultimately that they won't be successful if they don't
Right.
kind of understand this dynamic. You now are kind of in a new venture, right? You are looking at investing in startup
Mhm.
ventures. I'm
Correct.
really curious about that because it's a world that, to your point, is growing, and entrepreneurs themselves are really, where our economy is being driven towards. What's new and different in this world for you, in Ocean Crest? Tell us
So,
about it.
oh, great. Well, I love the water, Pam. I always have, and I live on an island in Connecticut, and I spend my time in Naples on Vanderbilt Beach. So I'm drawn to the water. So the idea of the metaphor when I was thinking about a company was in a wave, and I'm an avid boater. The top of the wave is called the crest, and the bottom of the wave is called the trough.
Okay.
And I think in between being at the top of your game or struggling or failing is what happens in between there. And so for us, the metaphor was, we're going to help you ascend and be part of the crest of the wave. And there are very specific things that have to happen if you want to be an entrepreneur, start a business. Many people are really adept at it and have really good ideas, but either they don't have the mindset, or they're afraid, or they're fearful. And so the idea is, I try to help people take that leap. I try to build confidence with them. And particularly some of the non-traditional businesses, minority-owned businesses are on the rise. Women-owned businesses are on the rise. It's a great thing for the economy. And I think so for me, it was kind of a next iteration of my value of how I wanted to help people. The first one being through a career team to get people jobs. This one is kind of like, okay, maybe you have a side hustle, you have a passion or an itch you want to scratch, you have a great idea, but you don't know how to get started. Where do
Mhm.
you go? So we wanted to kind of be that catalyst for people, not only by putting dollars and money and capital behind it, but also the resources. I've assembled this amazing advisory board. I'm so grateful to them. People from all walks of life. Wendy Gillis from the Kauffman Foundation just joined. It was a $2.5 billion foundation. Dr. David Katz, who is a nominee for Surgeon General, is on it. I've got people who started publicly companies, and M&A people and bankers, and Warwick Dunn, who was a part owner right now of the Atlanta Falcons, and just a group of people who just come together as a community to act as a advisory board for people that we decide we want to get behind. And I think the statement that, all of us are better than one of us really, really is true. So that's what I'm up to now. We've only started at Pam. It's been 6 months in the making. We've looked at 20 companies. We've invested in 4 of them already. And I just couldn't be more excited about some of the people. And I think back to myself when I was a young entrepreneur. If I had had someone that gave me a metaphoric hug and gave me the confidence and taught me about certain things, I would have done so much better. So that's what I want to do. I want to give back in that regard.
That's really cool. So now I'm curious, 20 companies, 4 you invested in. Are you seeing those are companies that are looking to start up? Are they mostly in the technology space, or is it sort of all over?
It's all over, but technology permeates everything we're doing. So we invested, we're looking at a company that does fitness products, and Gronk, Gronkowski, we're talking about the Super Bowl and all that.
Yeah.
He's a 15% owner. So we got a chance to talk to his brothers, but it's the technology of the exercise and how it works the body versus just saying, here's the product. And another one is a grant writing firm. And a lot of the firms that are out there looking for grant writing have to do with leveraging AI. You mentioned that earlier. How do I blend AI into my industry or my company? And then, there are others that we look at, that are involved in integrated dermatology. Like we've all been touched by cancer. I'm never going to be able to solve cancer myself, and I'm certainly not a doctor, but dermatology is kind of a preventative cancer issue where you do the screening and a lot of people can be saved. So that was an area that we wanted to get behind. So I think it's all over in terms of opportunity, and people have such really cool ideas, Pam, but that technology thing just keeps coming back into the fold. And if you don't figure that out, I'm fascinated to see what AI means. I read about people who are scared to death of it and other people that say it's the next big boom in the world. And I watch some videos about things that already make me a little nervous. And I think there's a lot of morality questions about it, but look, it's here to stay and we need to embrace it. So yeah, it's just an exciting time. I wish I was 30 years younger where I was starting this all over again. You can tell I'm really fired up about it.
I am. I can tell. I'm really excited for you. So I know, though, you are not necessarily the fastest adopter of technology. I remember. So I'm curious, have you tried AI yet?
When you say try AI, I've been reading up on it,
No,
but when
have
you
you
say
actually
AI,
asked it a question?
I hire younger people that understand that better than I do. In fact, I still have when I have something wrong with my phone, Pam, I still call my 19-year-old and say, Olivia, I can't figure. So I'm one of those 60-year-old guys that kind of missed that whole coming out of the womb with a phone attached to you. But I think if you're smart and you're at our stage of life, you better surround yourself with people who really kind of embrace it and understand it and can make it simple for you. So yeah, I think by necessity, it's something for me. I kind of grew up old school. I grew up with, pad and pen. And I still think when you go into a meeting, Pam, you tell me, you call a meeting, you're the CEO and everybody's sitting around and you're ready to talk to them about something important, the vision of the organization. And everybody's sitting there on their phone and they're doing this while you're talking. And I'm thinking to myself, like, I found that so rude. But if you ask them, well, we're multitasking. This is how we live. And I'm thinking to myself, I don't know what the right way is, but I didn't grow up when I was talking to someone. I would hope that they would be focused on me and not trying to multitask. But listen, I'm old school.
I know. I'm right there with you, old school. I will tell you, I have tried it though. So I would encourage you to just ask it to write a paragraph about Chris Kuselias and all of his amazing endeavors. And I think you'll be amazed because I suspect that Carla, who supports us in the podcast, did a little of that for me when she was getting me ready to have a discussion with you. So Chris, before I let you go, tell us and our listeners about how they can find out about Crest Ventures.
Sure. It's just oceancrestventures.com. You can go on there. You can see some of the companies we're investing in. You can see some of the advisory board members with bios. If you have a good idea, there's a way to kind of just contact and place us. I have a managing director. He's a Duke University grad named Nick Briere. He kind of vets all the opportunities. And I think if you have a business that has a social impact is something that's important to us. We've turned down things that I just didn't think I was interested in. I want to do something that has a positive effect on people's lives and health and wellness, spirituality, mindset, et cetera. Those things, that's kind of our sweet spot. So that's how people can get in touch with us. Just, oceancrestventures.com.
Great. Thank you so much, Chris, my friend. I appreciate you. I always enjoy our discussions and our talks. I always learn, definitely. I love that your passion has carried you, into and beyond workforce, but into developing businesses and people. So I appreciate your time, and we'll look forward to talking to you again soon. Thanks again.
Absolutely. And Pam, let me just say to you, I think the industry is really lucky to have you. I've known you for 25 plus years. You just have energy, enthusiasm, you're forward thinking. I think Orlando's lucky to have a person as your caliber building what is a evolving and growing area. You mentioned all the hospitality areas that are taking off. So it's been my pleasure to know you. When I think about mentors in my life, you are certainly on that list. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.